Welcome to Lanter Hollow, a forgotten town lost in time where the flames never die and the people are stuck in memories of the past. Nathan Bell, a restoration expert, thought he was documenting history, but what he uncovered was something much darker. Trapped in a town with no way out, Nathan soon learns that to leave is to condemn both himself and the town. But can a flame ever truly go out when it remembers? Welcome to the Nightmare. Part 1, The Invitation to Nowhere. Nathan. It's strange the kinds of jobs you take when your credit cards start calling more than your friends. I'd been scraping by on odd gigs, restoring Civil War plaques, cataloging crumbling courthouses. Nothing glamorous, just enough to stay ahead of the debt. Then, out of nowhere, I got a letter. Not an email, not a call. A real letter. Thick paper, wax seal, no return address. Inside, Mr. Nathan Bell, we are aware of your expertise in historical preservation and documentation. Your skills are required for a town of interest, Lanter Hollow. You will find no records of it online. That is by design. Your compensation will be 3 times your usual rate, provided you agree not to ask questions. Should you accept, further instructions will follow. 3 times my rate, no questions, I laughed. Thought it was a joke. Then 2 days later, a courier delivered a briefcase with half the payment. In cash. So yeah, I said yes. A week later, I was driving through northern Maine, deeper into the woods than I'd ever gone. Cell signal vanished somewhere past the last gas station. My GPS turned into a spinning wheel. And the road? It stopped pretending to be, paved after a while. The final directions were typed on yellowing paper. Drive until the trees open, do not stop, do not turn around. You'll know when you're there. I thought I'd taken a wrong turn at least 5 times, but then the trees did open. Abruptly, a clearing, and in the middle of it a town that shouldn't be there. Not ruins, not shacks or abandoned shells. Town, 2-story homes, a town hall, a church with a crooked steeple, wooden buildings in near-perfect condition, and the strangest part, every window glowed, candles, dozens, hundreds, all burning steadily behind glass. I parked, got out of the car, and that's when I noticed no wind, no birds, no sound, just the steady silence of something holding its breath. I walked down the main road. My boots crunched gravel. The sound felt rude. Each house I passed was sealed, tight, curtains drawn, but inside, candlelight, warm, orange, alive. There were no cords, no signs of electricity, no satellite dishes, no power lines, no signs of life. And yet nothing had decayed. I tried knocking on a few doors. Hello, my name is Nathan Bell. I was sent to document the town. Is anyone here? Nothing, just the waxy glow from behind. The curtains, a wooden sign hung by the town square. Faded lettering, Lanter Hollow Est, 1839. Below it, a small wooden box containing a map. Not printed, hand-drawn. It was eerily precise. Houses numbered, streets named. Even my lodging, marked Inn, Room 3, prepared. Prepared. I walked to the inn, a long, slanted building with ivy crawling up its side. The front door was unlocked. Inside, more candles. No dust, no cobwebs, no footprints. Just room keys on a wall hook and a guest book that hadn't been touched in decades. I took the key for room 3. Upstairs, second door on the left. The room was warm, bed freshly made, a desk, an oil lamp unlit, and candles already burning. They didn't flicker, not once. I locked the door, sat down, pulled out my camera. Documenting was easy when nothing moved, but I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. Not from outside, from inside the walls. Like the town itself was aware of me. As night fell, the candlelight from the other buildings didn't dim. It moved. At 8:42 p.m., I looked out the window and noticed something impossible. The house across the street, which had been dark earlier, now glowed from within. Then another. The light was migrating, from homes I'd passed into homes I hadn't, like it was charting a path, or following one. I tried to tell myself it was just the shifting night, a trick of the eye, but I knew better. These flames weren't flickering with the wind. There was no wind. I reviewed the pictures on my camera. The flames were perfectly still in every shot, identical, unnaturally uniform. Not a hint of wax dripping either. Like the candles weren't burning at all. At 10:17 p.m., I decided to get some sleep. Locked the door, latched the windows, blew out the oil lamp. The candles I left burning. I didn't trust the dark here, but that didn't matter. Because when I woke up and sometime after midnight, I felt it, a change in the air. The kind of feeling you get when you're not alone anymore. I sat up and saw it. On the nightstand beside me was a candle. It hadn't been there before. Small, white, flickering. All the others in the room were still burning, steady and frozen like before. But this one, it moved. It danced, like it was happy. And I had locked the door. Part 2. Blow one out. Nathan. I didn't sleep after that. I just sat in bed staring at that one candle on the nightstand, the one that hadn't been there when I went to sleep, the only one that moved. It flickered. Not like the others. Not like the stiff, eerie stillness I'd come to expect. No, this one danced like it was alive, like it knew I'd seen it. I checked the door, still locked. Windows too. So how the hell had it gotten in? I stayed up until dawn, watching, listening. Nothing happened. When morning finally came, if you could call it that because the sky over Lanter Hollow never seemed to fully brighten, I decided to investigate. First, I examined the candles. They were everywhere, perched on mantels, clustered on bookshelves lining the hallways. Dozens in every room, but not a single one of them had dripped wax. Not a single one had flickered. I held my hand near one. No heat. Got closer, still nothing. I touched the flame, nothing, not even a tingle. Cold fire. Or something pretending to be fire. My skin itched where it had touched me. Not burned, just wrong. Like something old and damp had brushed against me. I moved to the kitchen, lit only by more of the same candles, all quietly glowing. In the pantry was a single taper on a wooden shelf. This time I blew it out. It vanished with a whisper of smoke. I stood there for 5 minutes. Nothing. No change in pressure, no sounds. I waited. A little longer. Still nothing. I felt stupid, paranoid. Maybe I wanted something to happen. At least that would give this place some logic, some rules. So I left it, went back to taking photos, marking buildings, sketching layouts on the map from the town square. And for hours, everything seemed still, too still. The silence pressed in, heavier than before, like the whole town was listening, waiting. And then, it happened. I was photographing the inn's parlor when I noticed it. A candle had appeared on the arm of the sofa across the room. It hadn't been there earlier. I was sure of it. My notes, my photos. It wasn't there, and it was lit. Not like the others. This one flickered. Behind it, the doorway to the hall was just shadows, and something in the shadows moved. I froze. A shape, thin, tall, just outside the reach of the light, like someone standing still, waiting to be noticed. I stepped closer, slowly, my heart hammering so loud I could barely breathe. But as I reached the doorway, the light from the candle seemed to lean toward me, like a flower turning. In the sun, the figure vanished, gone. No sound, no footsteps, no draft, just the flickering candle and a chill. That night I tried to convince myself it was fatigue, hallucination, stress, anything. I left the pantry candle unlit. Let it stay dark. Maybe I needed to prove the place wasn't haunted. Maybe I just needed to feel in control. Big mistake. I dreamed. I was in the town square. The candles were out. Everyone. People stood in the streets, motionless. Men, women, children. But their eyes were wide, white, burning. Their skin blackened and blistering. But there were no flames, no smoke. Just the sound of nothing. Their mouths opened, wide, like they were screaming. But no sound came out. They reached for me. Their skin peeled where their hands met mine. But it didn't burn me. It stuck, melted, and I woke up gasping, drenched, in sweat. It was still dark. The candles in the room still glowed their soft amber. Except now, there were black smudges on the floor, like ash, leading from the door to the side of my bed. Footprints, bare, human. I followed them with my eyes. They stopped right beside my pillow. I scrambled out of bed, grabbed my audio recorder from the desk and hit play. I always keep a log, my way of staying sane in the field. But when I played it back, the last file was timestamped 2:11 a.m., roughly the time I'd been dreaming. And it wasn't me talking, it was my voice. Yes, but not my words. The recording crackled, and then, they burn without fire. They scream with no mouth. They remember you, Nathan. Don't blow them out again. Silence. Then the sound of breathing. My breathing. But I hadn't touched the recorder all night. I backed up the files, hid the device under my pillow, sat in the corner of the room with a flashlight in my hand and a knife from the kitchen in the other. I watched the door. It never opened. But just before dawn, the pantry. Candle lit itself. Part 3. Names in wax. Nathan. There's a point when curiosity becomes survival, when you stop asking, what is this place, and start asking, how do I leave? I didn't sleep after the candle relit itself. I didn't even pretend. Waited for morning, if you could call it that, and packed my bag. I left most of my gear, just essentials, my camera, flashlight, maps, food, water, and I ran. Straight down the main road, past the houses and their unwavering candlelit windows, past the inn, past the crooked steeple of the church, into the woods. There was a road, gravel, old but still visible, and for a while it felt like I was getting somewhere. But then, I saw the same bent stop sign, the same leaning maple tree with a crack running through the bark, the same damn squirrel skull I'd noticed near the ditch on the way in. I'd looped 3 times. I tried, picking different directions each time. North, east, even off-road through the brush, same result. Back to the town square, back to the inn like the town was a circle. No, a trap, a spiral pulling me inward. So I did what I should have done the first night. I started searching, hard, house by house. Most were empty, cold, lit only by their soft, soulless candlelight. But then I reached a home near the edge of town. A blue one with a sagging porch and stained glass windows that looked too clean to be over 100 years old. The front door creaked. Inside, everything was intact. Furniture, dishes, lace runners. And the smell, wax and rosewater. Sweet, heavy. There was a basement door beneath the stairs. Padlocked, but rusted through. I pried it open. What I found down there, they weren't mannequins. They weren't statues. Dozens of figures, human-sized, made of wax, melted in strange, uneven ways. Some slumped forward like they were praying. Others were frozen mid-scream, hands raised to faces that were half gone. One sat, upright in a rocking chair, a book resting on its lap. Its face was peaceful, but the wax had run down its chest, forming strange grooves in the surface. Not natural melting, more like decay. Beneath each figure, a small metal plaque. Names: Elizabeth Cale, 1841, Francis Rowe, 1872, Miriam Pike, 1906 Robert Bell, 1933 Bell. That stopped me. I crouched, looked closer. Robert Bell. No middle name, no date of death. Just the name. I didn't know any Robert Bell in my family, but the name chilled me anyway. Then I moved to the back of the basement, and I saw it. The last figure, more intact than the rest, facing the wall, as if trying not to be seen. I circled around it. Its eyes were wide, its mouth slightly open. One arm lifted as if reaching for something, or trying to hold something back, and beneath it, the plaque read, Nathaniel Bell. I stumbled back. My flashlight hit the floor and spun, throwing shadows across the room. Each wax figure seemed to twitch under the motion, just for a second. Just enough to make me question what I saw. I ran, burst back into the street, breathing too fast. Hands shaking. Every candle in every window seemed brighter now. Watching, responding, like they knew I had seen it. I ran to the church, old, wooden, with a warped door and cracked bell tower. A note was nailed to the entrance. Simple, block letters. We don't burn with fire, we burn with memory. I stood there staring at the words, burn with memory. Was that what the candles were? Memories? People? Were the wax figures what was left behind, or what remained when the memory had cooled? Inside the church, pews lined both sides. Candles flanked the altar. Hundreds. Some white, some yellowed, some nearly gone. And at the center of them, a single unlit candle. No label, just a stub. Waiting. I didn't stay. I left, back to the square. I didn't know where else to go. But as I stepped into the road, I froze. In the distance, one at the edge of the square where the town faded into forest, they were there, dozens of them, figures, people-shaped, motionless, featureless, just outlines of humans, pale as wax, standing, watching, no faces, no eyes, just silence. One of them, taller than the rest, took a step forward. The other stayed still. The tall one raised its arm, slowly, and pointed, not at me, at the inn, at my window, and in the window, barely visible, a new candle had lit itself, flickering, waiting. Part 4, what the candles remember. Nathan, I didn't sleep, again. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw them, the wax people, the crowd at the edge of the square, still, faceless things, watching. I tried to rationalize, to tell myself this was some kind of elaborate setup, a hoax, something I hadn't figured out yet, but deep down, I knew better. The town wanted me to see these things, and I was starting to think the candles weren't just light. They were memory, identity, and something was keeping them lit. I spent most of the morning mapping the buildings I hadn't entered. I saved the schoolhouse for last. It sat a little away from the rest of the town, 2 stories high with broken shutters and ivy curling over the entrance. The wood had aged silver, but the windows were spotless. Inside, the first thing I noticed was the quiet. Too quiet. Even in Lanter Hollow, where silence was normal, the schoolhouse felt wrong. Dead. My footsteps echoed down the hallway too loudly. My breath bounced back at me like the walls were listening. Classrooms lined the corridor, but one door stood open. Inside, rows of child-sized desks sat in perfect lines, each with a candle at the center. None were lit. Dust covered everything, except the candles. They were pristine, and at the top of each desk, a name carved deep into the wood. Eleanor W. Jasper Reed, Thomas P. Abigail Bell, Bell again. The carving was old, but the wax had no dust, no aging. Like it had just been placed. The air was thick, cloying, like breathing through wool. And every time I moved, the room seemed to change. Shadows stretched too long. My own voice, when I whispered into the recorder, came back to me, delayed, like something was mimicking me just a second too late. On the teacher's desk sat an old journal, the cover warped with moisture, pages curling at the edges. Most of it was unreadable, smeared ink, blotchy entries. But one page had fresh handwriting. Each soul once lit must stay burning. If they forget themselves, the fire dies. If too many go dark at once, it wakes up. I read it 3 times. It wakes up. What was it? And what did burning mean if not literal fire? I sat down. That was a mistake. As soon as I did, the temperature dropped. Not in a normal way, not like cold air, more like absence. Like something was being pulled out of me. And then the candles lit. All at once, rows of tiny flames, suddenly alive, flickering in unison. The light wasn't warm, it was aware. I stood slowly, backing toward the door. A sound echoed behind me, soft footsteps on old wood. But when I turned, nothing, just the hallway. But I knew I wasn't alone anymore. That night, I set up all my recording equipment, microphones, cameras, audio logs. I needed proof. I needed answers. The whispering started just after midnight. At first, it was background noise, like wind under a door. But then it sharpened, like voices remembering how to speak. I played the audio back over and over, slowed it down. Words emerged. He lit it. He blew it out. Not supposed to blow it out. It's still burning. I was shaking. Eyes fixed on the waveform dancing on my laptop screen, and then came the last voice. Different, deeper, my voice. Only it wasn't something I'd recorded. I hadn't said this, but it was me. You're already lit, Nathan. You just forgot. Silence. I listened again. Same thing, same tone, same voice. Mine, but distant, like it had traveled a long way to find me. I ran to the mirror. My face looked the same, mostly, but something was off in my eyes. A shimmer, like a reflection, behind the pupils. I held a candle up to my cheek. The flame leaned toward me, not like a draft, like recognition. I put the recorder back on and whispered, "What do you mean I'm already lit?" Nothing. Then, barely audible, memory keeps it alive. When it fades, so do you. That's when I looked over at my notebook. My name, Nathan Bell. I stared at the letters. They looked unfamiliar, like I was seeing them for the first time, like I had forgotten what they meant. And on the page, the candle beside me flickered once and then burned steadier than ever. Part 5. The flame without fire. Nathan. I thought lighting a trail of candles through the woods might help. I thought it was my way out. A beacon that would lead me to the edge of this damn town. It seemed logical. I'd seen how the candles moved before. They weren't just burning, they were drawing me, pulling me into the same dark corner of my mind where it all began. So I decided I'd make my own trail. If the town could pull me in circles, I could at least follow the fire. I grabbed every candle I could find in the inn, took my matches, and set them alight one by one, creating a path through the forest. I watched them burn, I watched them flicker. I walked and walked for what felt like hours. The wind didn't change. The trees didn't shift. The town's outline was still a shadow behind me. But something felt wrong. The path wasn't leading me anywhere. The trees were closer. The ground uneven. I'd passed that same boulder. I had crossed that fallen tree before I stopped. Turned around and the candles were still burning. They were still glowing in the woods behind me. But the path was different. The candles had moved and I was back. Back in Lanter Hollow. I don't know how it happened. 1 minute I was in the woods. The next, I was standing at the town square again, surrounded by the same dead, silent houses. Every window was dark. No flickering lights. No wax. Just pitch black. I ran to the inn, tried the door. Locked. The street was still empty, but the air, thick, like the town itself was breathing. That's when I heard it. A shift in the air. The feeling of something watching. I turned. At first, it looked like a distortion in the air. A heat shimmer, like the ground was rising in waves. Then, it began to form. A shape, a figure, almost human, but not. A mass of nothing, or everything. It flickered like a candle flame caught in the wind, but it had no source. No candle, no light, no fire. Just heat, radiating from a body that wasn't really there. Stumbled back, but the figure followed. Closer. The air grew hotter. The ground beneath me started to pulse. The figure was gaining on me, and I could hear it now. A low hum. Not from it, but from the town itself. From the buildings. From the walls. I ran. Into the church. I threw open the door and slammed it. Behind me, breathing hard, it didn't help. The heat was still there, pressing at the edges of the room, flickering in the dark corners. I ran to the altar. The candles were out. The pews were empty, and the shadows felt alive. Watching, waiting. I rushed down to the crypt, a narrow stone staircase that led deep beneath the church. A strange, oppressive silence filled the air as I descended. There were no footsteps, no breath, just the feeling of something down there with me. The walls of the crypt were covered in soot and charred markings, as if the place had been set alight once and never put out. In the center, a stone sarcophagus lay half open. I hesitated, my breath shallow, my heartbeat deafening in my ears. Then, I stepped closer, and there, inside the crypt, was a figure. Body. It wasn't just a corpse. It was me. Burned beyond recognition. The skin cracked and blackened. The bones beneath were visible, but they weren't brittle. They seemed whole, preserved. And the eyes, still alive, staring, wide. Silent screams, painted across the scorched face. I stepped back, hands shaking. My breath caught. How was I here? How could this be me? I looked around the crypt. The walls were covered with symbols I couldn't read. But one caught my eye, carved deeply into the stone. A final note. The flame is you. If you leave, it dies. I didn't understand. It didn't make sense. How could it be me? How could I be in the crypt, in this burning shell of myself, and still be here alive? I ran. I didn't know what else to do. I sprinted back to the square, the heat still following, pressing in. I tried to scream, but my throat was dry. I looked at the town, the stillness that had once seemed peaceful now suffocating. The figure, the flickering thing, was still behind me, gaining speed. It was pulling me toward the inn, toward the same spot where I'd found the trail of candles. I reached the doorway, I turned around, and it stopped. Not like a person would stop. It just froze. And then, in a voice that wasn't mine, but somehow sounded like it, it whispered, "You can't leave." And the candles around me flickered once, then died, and the town was still, dead still. Part 6, to burn forever. Nathan. I had thought I was trapped by the town, that it was the streets, the trees, the endless buildings full of silent windows that held me in place. But that was a lie. It wasn't the town. It wasn't the walls. It wasn't even the thing that flickered in the dark. I was trapped by something far older, far deeper. Something that lived in the flames, in the wax, in the light and shadows that never moved. I could feel it now. The pull, the tug, like a chain wrapped around my ribs, slowly pulling me towards something I couldn't see but knew was there. The thing that lived in the flames. The thing that remembered. I sat in the inn for hours. The candles flickered around me, constant, unyielding. My thoughts were thick, like I was underwater. I'd tried to leave, I'd tried to run, but every path led back to the same spot. The same square, the same empty, waiting town. And now, I understood. It wasn't the town that needed me. It was the flame. I had felt the pull in the air before. I had seen it in the town's empty windows, in the empty faces of the people that walked without words. The thing that lived in the candlelight wasn't just watching me, it was keeping me here. Didiyang, town had no soul without it, no heartbeat, no reason to exist. And if I left, if I let the flame go out, it would die. The flame would die, and so would I. I stood up, numb. The knowledge weighed on me like stones in my chest. I walked toward the town hall, the one building I hadn't fully explored. I needed answers. I needed to know what the hell was happening. Inside, the air was thick with dust and a stale, musty scent, a smell of things that had been sitting too long, waiting. The hall was empty. The ceiling sagged under its own weight. But there, in the center of the room, something made my stomach drop. A figure. It was made of wax, just like the others. But this one wasn't frozen in fear or peace. This one was taking shape, slowly, felting into a familiar form. I took a step closer. My heart hammered in my chest. It was me. My face, my body, my posture, all made of wax. Slowly creeping outward from the base, the form of myself being sculpted. It was me, but I wasn't just in the town anymore. I was becoming the town. My memory, my soul. I felt dizzy. I wanted to scream, but the sound caught in my throat. Then I saw them. The townspeople, they were here, in the hall, standing silently in the back, like they had always been. They moved in that same jerky, puppet-like way, their bodies stiff but somehow fluid at the same time. They had no faces, only wide, empty eyes glowing with that cold, waxen light. One of them stepped forward. It held out a candle. Its eyes flickered with something like recognition. It nodded, once, and then held the flame toward me. No words, no sound, just the gesture. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. I felt a cold, hollow emptiness fill me, like I was being pulled into something I could never escape. It was the flame that bound me, not the town, not the people, but the memory of me. I reached out, unable to stop myself. I took the candle, and I walked back toward the inn. The townspeople followed, their bodies stiff and unblinking, silent. As I entered the inn, I set the candle on the bedside table. The flame wavered, flickering, like it knew what was happening. I sat on the bed staring at the flame, watching it burn. I couldn't feel anything anymore. No fear, no anger, just a sickening calm. I was empty, hollow. A soft creak came from the door behind me. I didn't look back. The door was locked. The windows were shut. The town was still. The candle flickered once. A single drop of wax slid down the side of the glass. My journal lay open on the table beside me. My hand reached for it, moving without thought. The pen scraped against the page. My last entry, to burn without fire is still to burn. And that was the truth. Because here in Lanter Hollow, there was no flame that would ever die. Not while the town still remembered. The candles are still burning in Lanter Hollow, and so is Nathan, trapped in a cycle he can never escape. What happens when memories and flames are all that remain? If you think you've seen the end, remember, some fires never die. They just keep burning. Keep watching and keep questioning what you think you know. The light might just lead you deeper.